Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next The Rise of Kyoshi chapter analysis video. This one's going to be for chapter 26, which is called The Challenge. And this is an interesting chapter. It continues this kind of run of chapters from basically the previous one right up until the end, where something big is pretty much going to happen in every chapter. That's how good the end of this book is in terms of just big things happening. And so this one is the aftermath of the reveal from the end of last chapter. Zhu Ping-an was the prisoner they had to free. He's the leader of the Yellownecks. The Yellownecks are now back, and the Flying Opera Company have made that happen. So what is their reaction to the fact that they have suddenly sort of unleashed this threat back on the world? This thing that is basically, this is what Jianzhu's kind of reputation, he kind of sullied his reputation taking this group out in the past. Now they're back in business. What do they do about it? And that's what all this chapter is about. It's about the conflict within the group. Do we have to take him out now? Should we wait and just let him go and see what happens? Has he changed in the 8 years of being in prison? Will he not go back to doing things like he did before? Or what? Kyoshi is forced into that leadership position where she has to make the decision for the group. Do they decide to stand their ground here and stop him, take responsibility for this, or what? So let's get into this in detail. So immediately, first line of the chapter, we have to do something, Rangi said. This is our fault. And this starts this Rangi versus Kirima discussion. Kyoshi's not really involved in the discussion. Rangi and Kirima are going to go back and forth here. There's going to be a little bit of insert stuff from like Wong and Lao Ji, a little bit from Lek as well. But Kyoshi is only going to be brought in right at the end in terms of like, what should we do now that we've discussed this? And the idea is that Rangi knows that they have to do something. She, like obviously being part of like in a way like the nobility and stuff like that, knows exactly what Jianzhu did to take these guys out in the past and what they did. Kyoshi as well kind of has that perspective of she knows just how bad the Yellownecks are. The other members of the Flying Opera Company know that stuff too, but they're taking more of this sort of, Dao Fei approach of like, we did our part of the job. It's not our responsibility what happens next. But, they have to get across that idea of like, even Wong says, the Yellownecks are business that we don't want any part of. This is not, they're not in this life for money or freedom. They take glee in pillage and destruction. They're wanton killers, and Zhu Ping-an is their brains, heart, and soul. He was a bloodthirsty madman before he spent the last 8 years locked up and dreaming about revenge. And they even get across the idea that he's kind of insane, or unhinged is the word that they use here, in that one of his nicknames is the General of Pandamu. And this is actually said to be a completely made-up place. It is a world that he made up himself. And so that's who they're dealing with here. And Rangi even notes that, I didn't even know that he was alive. The reports sent to the Earth King by Jianzhu himself list Zhu as being dead at the Battle of Zulu Pass. So, this is where the argument sort of shifts from like Kirima being like, wait, look, we don't have to do anything here because they're only a couple of hundred members strong. The law will actually take them out. If we just leave them, the abiders will eventually take them down. It'll be no problem. But Rangi has to kind of point out that, look, Zhu started out the Yellownecks as something similar to this. They're not going to let themselves just be taken out here. She says here, if more Yellownecks come out of hiding and rally to his banner, then we're back to the dark days after Karuk died. And again, Kirima just wants to kind of free herself from this. Lao Ji then intervenes and says, years ago I passed through a town caught in the wake of the Yellownecks. I saw what happened to the residents. They'd been ... stacked. And this is one of the few times in the book where the book takes the approach of sort of feeling the need to almost censor itself. It's been fairly clear-cut about bending violence and like what happens to people, the Rangi breaking the guy's leg and stuff like that, people getting pretty badly injured in these fights and being killed. But the fact that here they're getting across the brutality of the Yellownecks in that the details of what they've done is not something even this book doesn't want to really reveal to you, go into the details. So just saying stuff like stacked, making a layering motion gives you the sense of that's what they do to people who they come across. So then this is when Lao Ji actually directs the question towards Kyoshi. What do you think we should do, given your newfound taste for making decisions of life and death? His question was dripping with petulance. Obviously, Lao Ji is still a bit upset about the whole Governor Tay thing, but Kyoshi takes the neutral Jing approach and says, we'll wait and see what happens, but we'll wait from higher elevation, load up Peng Peng. And ultimately it comes down to, like, this is probably the correct approach here, is to just wait and see, does Zhu immediately go back to pillaging and killing people without any reason and stuff like that. And so Kyoshi just wanting to just give that, even that slightest chance that he will embrace his newfound freedom, it's kind of worth doing. But very quickly, it only takes like a paragraph or two as we cut to the next scene to be like, no, we have to deal with him, because immediately he and the Yellownecks are going straight for the nearest inhabitants to take them out. So they're heading to a farmer, and Kyoshi gets straight down to business. I've made a mistake, we have to get down there now. And yeah, Kyoshi's just like, but I can't stay up here and watch anymore. Drop me off and fly away if you have to. And this is where the loyalty of the group really shows itself. This is like one Dao Fei group coming out to actively oppose another Dao Fei group. They didn't have to do this, but they're showing their loyalty to Kyoshi by sticking around. And Kurama says, no, if you go, we go. Once we hit the ground, we'll follow your lead. Rangi responds to this. Thank you, Rangi said to Kurama, the wind whipping her words, forcing her to shout. It was the nicest thing she's ever said to the waterbender. You're true companions of the Avatar. What good is that if we're dead? Kurama yelled back, though she blushed just a bit. So that's a nice one of just kind of this loyalty is really what brings Rangi and Kurama together in the end. And yeah, basically, they arrive at this farmer's house. They find his family, woman and son, beaten up by this group that's arrived at the house. Zhu is there. They have the father of this house kind of tied up, hanging from the roof. And they have him basically hanging over a pot of boiling water, like his toes are like in it. So they're kind of torturing him, and they're just acting like they're not doing anything that's wrong. And Kyoshi steps in here, kicks over the boiling water so the guy isn't being tortured anymore. And this is where she confronts him. Zhu, stop this, let them go. And he just says, first off, it's Uncle Zhu to you. And second, this man is an abider who worked for those who imprisoned me. He grew their grain and took their coin, which makes him another weight on the scales I must balance. If you can't handle this, you're not going to like what I do to the town of Zygon. Kyoshi's response is very, very strong here. You don't get Zygon, she snarled. You don't get any town in the Earth Kingdom, nor this farmhouse for that matter. You get the free air you can fit in your lungs and nothing else. And Zhu says, Kyoshi was it. I'm eternally grateful to you and your compatriots for rescuing me. But you're young and that's what you don't understand. 8 years of my life were stolen from me. Thousands of my followers. At your tender age, what would you know about that kind of injustice? And here's where we get some of kind of Kyoshi's inner kind of dialogue, her inner monologue. They're all the same, Kyoshi thought, every single one. Whether they clothe themselves in business or brotherhood or a higher calling only they can see. It doesn't matter. They're one and the same. They look at themselves like forces of nature, as inevitable ends, but they're not. Their depth is as false as the shoals at low tide. They twist the meaning of justice to absolve themselves of conscience. They're humans like us, made of skin and guts and pain. They need to be reminded of that fact. I said stop. And then she challenges him. Zhu Ping'an, I challenge you to face me on the Lei Tai immediately. And yeah, this is it. This is the point of this chapter. Her challenging Zhu. This is the most effective way to handle all of this, is for the leaders of each group to fight. That way it's not an all-out battle between the Yellownecks and the Flying Opera Company where they're severely outnumbered. This is actually ultimately the best way to do this. So I think Kyoshi handles this well. But like obviously we're going to see Lao Ji doesn't particularly like this approach from Kyoshi, but this is the right way to do things, I think, in terms of Dao Fei versus Dao Fei. This is a way to sort of get things to stop temporarily. They have to, under the code, deal with this challenge right now, and that's what the focus immediately turns to. So, he does say, challenges are meant to settle grievances. What insult have I given you? Your existence, Kyoshi spat. She didn't know it was possible for a group of hardened killers to gasp collectively. So that this turns it around. Her response here of just saying to probably the most hardened criminal in a way in the Avatar world, one of the most kind of legendary criminals, she just steps up in front of him. 16-year-old Kyoshi steps up and says, your existence is what I have an issue with, and she causes everyone to just like stop speaking. So they settle on the agreement here. Bending or without bending, Kyoshi said, weapons, anything goes. Yes, that's what it is. There's a quick break here. It doesn't get straight into the fight. While obviously the Dao Fei here all put the arena together. It's the Yellowknecks who put it all together. While the Flying Opera Company, they have their kind of final talk with Kyoshi before all of this. So they kind of realize that this is the kind of right thing to do in a way. It was sort of unplanned in a way, but this was really the only way to approach doing this correctly. So Kyoshi thinks Rangi's going to be annoyed at her. I'm sorry I keep doing this to you. But Rangi actually says, today you get a pass. As the Avatar, you would have tangled with horrors like Zu on a regular basis. This might be the first time you've done your duty since we left Yokoya. Lao Ji then interrupts and says, Kyoshi, can I speak to you for a moment in private? And this is one of his first times, like publicly with the rest of the group, asking Kyoshi to talk to him. So the others are actually a bit like, what's going on here? Like, they've barely interacted. They don't know about all the killing lessons. So this is an unusual interaction for the rest of them to see. But what he says here is, what do you think you're doing? Kyoshi thinks, you think it's wrong to fight Zu? No, you fool. What I mean is that if you wanted Zu dead, you should have struck him down without notice, blindsided him. That's the way of the predator. Facing him in the Leitai and hoping for the best is the mentality of a herbivore braying and shaking its antlers to look good in front of the rest of the herd. I wanted you to drink blood, not chew grass. And she just bows, like a really honorable bow here, right down. I'm sorry, Sifu, but I'm not doing this as a killer. I'm doing this as the Avatar. Even the world won't know it. He says, stop that. You're embarrassing both of us. Figures, the one time I find a pupil I like, she tries to be as mortal as possible. Well, maybe Zu might suddenly pass away where he stands in the next few minutes. Death doesn't work like that. You're on your own. So, interesting little back and forth there. Ultimately, this is Kyoshi stepping up as the Avatar, realizing she has to do this. She has to put him down here and now. And her inner dialogue from the previous pages, I think, is important in all of this. They're humans like us, made of skin and guts and pain. They need to be reminded of that fact. That her showing this in the middle of this kind of public battle, basically, that she can defeat the leader, that's the only way to really end this in the correct way. So, stepping up as the Avatar here, not going in as the killer, the assassin, but feeling justified in what she's planning to do here, and that this is one of those battles where it is life and death, that she is pretty much going to have to kill him to get the victory here, because again the whole idea is that the Leitai, it's not really the referee just starts the match. That's all the referee is there for. The winner decides when it ends, so that's the big thing. So as the preparation finishes up here, Kyoshi just says, if anything happens, take Peng Peng and get out of here. And then, yep, we get the fight. They both prepare. Kyoshi's getting ready to go really, really big. She has her fans out. She's getting ready to go full on with the earthbending, because she thinks she's up against an earthbender. Why wouldn't she? Because it's earthbending group, the Yellowknecks. That's what she thinks. But here's what it says right at the end. But she was too slow, and she was playing the wrong game entirely. Zu thrust forward his arms, 2 fingers extended from each hand, and struck her fans with a bolt of lightning. That's the end of the chapter. When I first read this, that kind of floored me, because I was not expecting that. One, that he'd be revealed to be a firebender. That would have been kind of surprising enough as it was. But then the first real mention of like a kind of special bending technique really in the book up to now. Like, we've had a few different styles of earthbending, but nothing special like that before. We haven't seen any like metal bending, of course, because it doesn't exist yet. No lava bending. So the fact that like we get introduced right here, Zhu Ping'an is a lightning bender, is super impressive. And in a duel setting, of course, lightning generation, that's going to get the advantage immediately. And so he takes her by surprise in that the one thing we know about lightning is that, yeah, most people use it as a really quick on the draw firebending move that just is so fast because it's lightning. It's impossible to sort of defend against. So it's this ultimate thing. That's why Zhu was so confident going into this. And yeah, Kyoshi just gets nailed full force with lightning here, and it's cut off. It's just, she gets hit with lightning in the fan, so metal conducts electricity, so on. And what we're going to see here in the next chapter is, I suppose, how Kyoshi deals with this, being 100% of the back foot going into this fight, and how will she come back from this given her intent going in. So really, really good chapter. There's a lot of nice moments in this. This is one of those chapters where like you might only remember the chapter for the end with the challenge itself and the lightning, but you have all those other moments of like the Lao Ji scene that happens just before is nice, and her saying that I'm doing this as the Avatar, Rangi praising Kyoshi for doing this because she's stepping up as the Avatar. Even the Kirima and Rangi scene from earlier on, I think, is nice to have them be the ones kind of going back and forth, because they've been arguing with each other, but Rangi ultimately respecting Kirima for the loyalty she's shown to Kyoshi of sticking through with her, and the group is completely behind her, supporting her actions as like the new leader of the Flying Opera Company. That all works perfectly. The development of this group from being Kyoshi forcing her way in, trying to assume control immediately, to actually they do now look to her as the leader. That is great development to get to here. But next chapter I will be covering in a video later on today. I have to cover these two chapters in the same day because they're so important. But that's my thoughts on this chapter here. The challenge. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this one. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.